Hello, I'm Jen Judson, land warfare reporter for Defense News, and I'm here at the Space and Missile Defense Symposium, and this is our SMD debrief. Joining me is Air Force Lieutenant General Heath Collins, Missile Defense Agency Director, to discuss the latest on present, future, homeland, regional, global missile defense. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks, Jen. Thank you for this opportunity to talk about missile defense.
Absolutely. So I'm gonna kick things off with a bit of a scene-setting question for you. So the Missile Defense Agency has been around for roughly 2 decades. So give us a flavor of how missile defense threats have changed, how the missile defense process worked 20 years ago, how that's changed and adapted to stay ahead of the evolving threats that we're seeing.
Yeah, thanks, Jen. We're just a little over 20 years old, as you mentioned, as Missile Defense Agency, and as we began really focused on a particular threat, an intercontinental ballistic missile from a rogue nation coming into the homeland. The threat then was smaller numbers, known location from launches, ground-based launches coming towards the States, relatively simple reentry vehicles and simple scenes. And so that really was the basis of what our ground-based mid-course defense system was designed to go against. Lower numbers, simple threats, coming on a known trajectory, a ballistic trajectory. And then over the last 20 years, we've seen the threat mature in different areas and go in different areas. Certainly about 10 years in, we started focusing a little bit more on theater missile defense as things happened in the Middle East, and we started picking up a theater missile or regional missile defense mission set as well. So today's threat is really complicated, much more complicated than it was 20 years ago. The simple ballistic missile threat of the past is really in the past. Today's scenes are much more complex, many more countermeasures, much more deception, electronic warfare in those systems, as well the raid sizes, the sheer quantities of missiles have increased drastically, as shown just a few months ago in the Iranian attack on Israel. That large raid of ballistic missiles is something that we had never seen before. Also added to that then is on the theater side, we've gotten a much more complex threat, again, complex in the set of electronic warfare, electronic countermeasures, and the like. But then the threat has also looked to see where our ballistic missile defense system is, and they've tried to avoid it and attack where we may or they perceive we have a weakness.
What are some of the lessons that you have learned from events, in Ukraine, in the Middle East, that you are incorporating into development of systems that you will need for the future?
I think number one is that is what we need to expect moving forward. The one-off, two-off, a few ballistic missiles, and that's it. That's really not the fight of the future.
Sure.
The fight really is going to be an integrated fires fight against us, attacking from surface to space, and we've got to be prepared both for handling all of those different flight regimes, from UAVs down low all the way to ballistic missiles in space. We need to be prepared for the complexity of that very complex seed and the sheer size of the raid size that we had to handle.
And can you provide an update on the is it SPY-6 radar? Or am I getting it wrong?
ANTPY.
It's ANTPY, okay.
Yes.
So could you talk a little bit about where you are with that radar as the possible radar for the architecture for Guam?
Absolutely. That is still the planned radar for Guam. That is. And as you mentioned, that is based on proven technology. It is the technology, the long-range discrimination radar that we've built up in Alaska to do ballistic missile defense of the homeland. It's that technology. It's really one panel from an LRDR is really the technology that is the ANTPY-6.
Okay.
The first panel is on a boat on its way to Guam. To support a planned flight experiment that we're going to be doing in December, where we will use that one panel of a TPY-6, TP6. So now you get, it's hard to say.
I've confused you now.
So the TP6, along with we have one vertical launch system cell on the island, and we will be launching a target out of a C-17 in December, using the TP6 as the sensor to pick that up, and we will launch an SM-3 to intercept that off the island in December.
Excellent. So that sounds like it's on track for, I remember this being announced a year ago, so it still sounds like it's on track.
It is on track for December.
For the test. What do you expect the architecture to look like by the end of FY25? So, a year and a half from now or so. What do you think will be available?
It will look like it pretty much will look like it looks today. We have that on the island, and that will continue. Our first construction money to start building on the island is 25.
Okay.
So we will still, by the end of 25, we will have begun some military construction on some of the sites.
Okay. I did want to ask about the glide phase interceptor. You mentioned that earlier to counter hypersonic threats. Budget analysts are worried that the effort is underfunded. So does the agency have what it needs to proceed to develop this critical capability?
We are, as I mentioned at the beginning, with the resource constraints applied to us, the decision was to make an earlier decision. And that is forthcoming. We're working that with our joint partner, Japan. We've signed a co-development agreement with them, and so we're working with the Japanese on finally that decision space later this year. And from that, we'll move forward. But as part of that now, as we end up picking whoever we pick to continue, we will come back and we'll have to assess the risk of that design, any corrective actions we would want to take or mitigation activities we would want to take with that design. And then we would re-baseline the program based on that with an updated independent cost estimate and those type of things to inform that program going forward. And so we'll work through the normal steps of an acquisition to ensure the strategy that we've taken, which would be a single vendor soon. We will then have to take up and make sure that we make that program executable.
Do you anticipate seeing an improvement in completing planned test activities? Many planned tests kind of get scrapped or delayed, or the agency is kind of not able to meet some of the required tests. Not at your fault potentially, but what improvements are kind of underway to be able to fix that testing track record and kind of get more up to date on the tests that you need to have done in various systems?
That's a really comprehensive question because one could point out at any one of the many programs that you require to do the test. You can point to the ground test architecture that we have, the ground test enterprise that we have, and then just the availability to really do an integrated test, you need everything available. And so the availability of operational assets to do the flight test is also a challenge. Really, we've just got, there's different approaches of how you schedule. And you can schedule to try to get everything done as quickly as possible, and then if anything happens, then you don't deliver that. We've just really we're going to take a look at how we do baseline management, how we do baseline scheduling, how we assess risk and margin in our schedules to try to identify how we can streamline and ensure that if the elements and all the pieces are delivering on schedule and are firm on their execution, and we have some manageable amount of margin in the system. Because the flip side is you can put so much margin in it that it takes you forever to deliver everything, and nothing ever slips, but you're just not delivering capability fast enough. We always tend to focus on delivering capability sooner, and then there's obviously risk associated with that. And so that's the nature of the business of acquisition is trying to get all those integrated lines together, all at the same spot to support a flight test and then an operational capability. And we'll continue to try to improve that entire enterprise as we move forward.
Well, we are out of time, but thank you so much for taking the time out of your busy schedule here at the SMD Symposium to talk to me.
Yeah, great, Jen. Thank you. Really nice to spend time with you talking about missile defense.